Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The big stories that we are tracking for you tonight.
The COVID-19 pandemic and the conflict in Ukraine. These shocks have produced profound impact on the global economy. As if that was not enough, now we are in the midst of a third major shock.
The RBI hikes the repo rate by 50 basis points as expected. Governor Shaktikanta Das likens the current global monetary tightening to a third storm after COVID and the Ukraine war. Refuses to set an outer limit for rate hikes, saying future action will be data dependent. The RBI lowers the FY23 GDP forecast from 7.2% to 7%, maintains the inflation forecast at 6.7%. The central bank's projections mean inflation in September will be above the 6% mark, forcing the RBI to write to Parliament. The rupee reclaims lost ground against the dollar, posting the biggest one-day rally in a month. Governor Shaktikanta Das says the movement in the rupee is orderly compared to other currencies. Stock markets snap a 7-day losing streak. The Sensex rallies over 1,000 points. Nifty gains nearly 300, but for the week, the Sensex and the Nifty are still lower by over 1%. SEBI tightens the disclosure rules for IPOs. Issuers must disclose price per share based on past fundraising. SEBI chief says classical financial metrics are not appropriate for loss-making companies, which will now have to disclose key performance indicators. Days after the Kirit Parikh panel sought more time to finalize its recommendations on the gas price formula, the government has hiked the price of gas as per schedule. Gas from the old fields of ONGC and Oil India has seen a price hike of 40%. Gas from the Reliance BP fields hiked to more than $12 per unit. Vladimir Putin says he's ready for talks, calls Ukraine to the negotiating table, but announces the annexation of 4 occupied regions. At least 23 people dead after a civilian convoy was allegedly hit by a Russian missile in southwest Ukraine. RBI stands firm on tokenization, refuses to move the deadline from tomorrow. All credit and debit card transactions made online will have to mask the identity of the card holders via tokens. A litmus test for India's open network for digital commerce, ONDC, goes live in parts of Bengaluru with more than 200 grocery stores and restaurants registering for trials. The government-backed interoperable network is aimed at helping small retailers go online and reduce the dominance of Amazon, Flipkart and others. It's Shashi Tharoor versus Mallikarjun Kharge for the next president of the Congress party. Kharge, as the frontrunner, has the backing of large sections of the party. Well, the big story this evening, no surprises from the Monetary Policy Committee. The repo rate was hiked by 50 basis points for the third time in a row. This is also the fourth consecutive rate hike, including the 40 basis point hike announced in May. Now, with this, the repo rate has been raised by 190 basis points since April. The repo rate now stands at 5.9%. The policy stance remains focused on the withdrawal of accommodation. RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das has refused to give an outer limit for the rate hike, saying that future rate actions will be driven by data. In fact, he's likened the global monetary tightening to a third storm after COVID and the Ukraine war. The RBI has also cut the real GDP growth forecast for FY23 to 7% from 7.2% earlier. It expects the first quarter of the next fiscal year to record a GDP growth of 7.2%. Meanwhile, on inflation, the forecast for FY23 has been retained at 6.7%. The central bank's projections mean that inflation in September will be above the 6% mark. And when this happens, the Reserve Bank will have to write a letter to the government explaining the reasons for its failure to contain inflation below the 6% target for 3 consecutive quarters. This is as per the MPC mandate. Here are the key highlights from the governor.
In the last 2.5 years, the world has witnessed 2 major shocks: the COVID-19 pandemic and the conflict in Ukraine. These shocks have produced profound impact on the global economy. As if that was not enough, now we are in the midst of a third major shock, a storm, arising from aggressive monetary policy actions and even more aggressive communication, especially from advanced country central banks. In a policy tightening cycle, however, it is arduous to provide consistent forward guidance, particularly in a highly uncertain environment. In fact, forward guidance may even destabilize financial markets. Questions are often asked about the peak and terminal rates in a rate hiking cycle or in a rate tightening cycle. Without venturing into any forward guidance which can be hazardous in the present context, I would like to state that our actions will be carefully calibrated to the incoming data and the evolving scenario without being constrained by conventional or any textbook approach to policy making.
Well, that is the RBI Governor, and the policy did give some help to the rupee today. The Indian currency posting its biggest single-day gain in a month, appreciating around 50 paise against the dollar, ending at 81 rupees and 34 paise to the dollar. The Reserve Bank Governor said that the movement of the rupee has been orderly when compared to most other countries. He also added that the RBI's forex reserves continue to remain strong.
The movement of the Indian rupee has, however, been orderly compared to most other countries. The Indian rupee has depreciated by 7.4% against the US dollar. The Reserve Bank intervenes in the market to curb excess volatility and anchor expectations. The overarching focus is on maintaining macroeconomic stability and market confidence. The aspect of adequacy of forex reserves is always kept in mind. The umbrella, as I had said earlier, continues to remain strong.
Well, that is the Governor. Lata joins us now with her take on the monetary policy. Lata, rates, inflation, growth, the trajectory and the guidance and the commentary that came in from the MPC and the RBI, what do you make of it?
Well, first up, the 50 basis rate hike is being treated by the market as boringly predictable. Now, isn't that surprising? 50 basis is a lot, and in India, in normal times, it would have raised heckles from political circles and from markets. But such is the turmoil in the market and the attack on the rupee that, 50 basis has become so acceptable. That stands out. Now, for the other forecast that the Governor or the MPC has made, growth at 7%, perhaps is a tad optimistic. We're still living in uncertain times in terms of a global slowdown. And even arithmetically, if you adjust the much lower than expected first quarter growth, 13.5 compared to RBI 16.2, it's likely that growth is actually going to be less than 7%. I mean, that's a very distinct possibility. Inflation at 6.7 is their forecast. They've retained it. Even that could be a little ambitious. That is predicated upon inflation coming down to 5.8% in the last quarter. It's too much of a bet right now, given the way in which cereal prices have gone up. The Anna Yojana has been extended, and that can also create, a psychological impact of lower stocks with the government, and therefore keep prices higher. Veggie prices are higher. So that's a bit of an ask, that 6.7 and 5.8 by the last quarter. Governor assiduously tried to explain that he will not give any guidance. But, he defended withdrawal of accommodation by saying that means we are still accommodative, which means there are more hikes. So December, not only is the CPI for October and September going to be uncomfortably high, higher than 7 for September and almost 7 for October. In that background, when you go into December and you have written a letter to Parliament why you failed to keep inflation under 6%, which was your mandate, it's very difficult not to do a 35 basis. So my sense is, from putting everything together, especially defense of withdrawal of accommodation by the governor, it looks like he has to remove more accommodation in December. So 35 in December perhaps is a given, and maybe even another 25 in February. If the Fed is going on hiking all the way up to March, it's difficult not to move at all. So chances are we are going to peak at 6.5.
All right, so we will see possibly another rate hike in December and February. Lata, many thanks for joining us. Stock markets rallying after the Reserve Bank's decision, snapping a 7-day losing streak. The Sensex gained over 1,000 points today. The Nifty rallied nearly 300 points. Financials led the rally with the Nifty Bank Index gaining 3%. But for the week, both the Sensex and the Nifty lower by 1%. Metal stocks were the biggest losers, ending the week over 4% lower. Auto and financials were also lower by 2% for the week. Anuj joins us now to wrap up the market action. Anuj, up for today but down for the week. Short covering today?
Powerful short covering is what we had today. We had the market sitting with record high short positions when trade started today. It was the start of a new series, and we had, like I explained in the morning as well, record high short positions from FIIs. The Bank Nifty led with 2.5% rally after the policy. So the event is out of the way, even though the event itself may not have anything extraordinary for the market, something which was priced in, perhaps. Risk on visible in all the metal names. But this is a market which is about the dollar-rupee algo trade, and that's what played out today. The rupee was very strong, and that led to the Bank Nifty being strong. In fact, look at the gainers. You had Hindalco, Bharti made a new high, by the way, and all the financials after that, Bajaj Finance, IndusInd, Kotak, the HDFC Twins, ICICI, even Reliance did well. In the F&O space, you had some big gainers like India Cement, Canara Bank, and Indus Star, while gas was a sector, city gas, that is, which was on the downside in anticipation of price hikes, so MGL, IGL, and Gujarat Gas. As I said, it's an algo trade, a lot dependent on what's happening with the dollar index and currency market. So today it was a good short covering move, but it cannot be said that a trend has emerged once again. For that, we'll need to see follow through.
All right, Anuj, many thanks. The big global story, Russian President Vladimir Putin has proclaimed annexation of Donetsk, Kherson and other regions that voted for Russia in a so-called referendum. All the annexed territories together form 15% of Ukrainian territory. This is the first Russian annexation since that of Crimea 8 years ago. During his speech, Putin called on Ukraine to stop the military attacks and return to the negotiating table. He said Russia is prepared for talks.
I want Kyiv regime and their sponsors from the West to hear me, to heed me. I want everyone to remember that people who live in Donetsk and Lugansk and Kherson and Zaporozhye, now they become our citizens forever. We appeal to the Kyiv regime to cease fire immediately, all the hostilities, the war that they started back in 2014, and to go back at the negotiations table, because we are ready to do that. And we have said that on many occasions, but the choice of the people of Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye and Kherson, we are not going to discuss that. The choice was made, and Russia will not betray this choice.
And the EU, as well as other nations, including the US, have called the referendum a sham and do not accept this so-called annexation. Back home, market regulator SEBI has tightened the disclosure rules for IPOs, and the move comes after a slew of new age companies hit Dalal Street and led to wealth destruction for investors. Starting now, issuers of an IPO will need to disclose price per share based on past fundraising. Companies will need to disclose the price per share of the last 5 transactions not older than 3 years ahead of the IPO. SEBI Chief Madhavi Puri Butt said classical financial metrics are not appropriate for loss-making companies, and they will now need to disclose key performance indicators along with other disclosures. Take a look.
What is the purpose and thinking behind this disclosure requirement is really to give investors a better basis to make their decisions on whether the price is right for them or not, and also to share what is it that has been, there should be no information asymmetry. So whatever it is that has been shared with the QIBs, it's what should be shared with the retail investors.
IPO disclosure norms tightened as we've been reporting, now official. A quick check of some of the other headlines. Insurance regulator is likely to approve new regulations on expense incurred by general insurers. Sources say expensive management is likely to be capped at 30% of the gross annual premium. The government has hiked the price of gas from old fields of ONGC and Oil India and the Reliance BP joint venture. Remember, the review was set to take place on the 1st, and that is what has happened. The price of gas for ONGC and Oil India's oil fields have been hiked from $6.1 per unit to $8.57 per unit. The price for the Reliance BP joint venture revised upwards to $12.46 per unit. There is also a cap that has been imposed, and that cap will now be in place till March of 2023. Remember, this is something that we've been reporting. The government has also set up the Kirit Parikh Committee report to review the gas pricing formula. The committee has sought more time from the government to be able to submit its report, but the revision of gas prices, which was supposed to happen from the 1st of October, that has now been notified by the government. Vodafone Idea says that they've been in talks with Indus Towers to strike softer payment terms, adding that the discussions have not been concluded yet. The statement comes after reports of Indus Tower warning the telecom company that it could lose access to tower services if dues are not cleared. Nestle India has announced that CFO David McDaniel, who also served as the Executive Director of Finance and Control, will step down at the end of February. He will take up a new assignment with the Nestle affiliate. Svetlana Boldina, currently the Head of Finance and Control of Nestle Indonesia, will succeed. Air India will expand its international operations. It has announced 20 additional flights every week to Birmingham, London and San Francisco. Post the expansion, Air India will operate 40 weekly flights to the US and 48 flights to the UK. The Reserve Bank of India remains firm on tokenization, or the process of masking identity of credit and debit card holders via tokens. Tokenization will become mandatory from tomorrow. As scheduled, RBI Governor, Deputy Governor Ravi Shankar says the system is ready for the change, with 40% of transactions in September having been done through tokenization.
On tokenization, the system is ready. Roughly about 35 crore tokens have already been created. As per the data we have, in September itself, about 40% of transactions were undertaken using tokens. There are a few participants who may not be ready, but that would largely be because, or probably because, of their unwillingness to comply. And we don't believe that we should hold back efforts to ensure customer protection because of such laggards.
Well, get ready for tokenization starting tomorrow. The RBI wants to move banks from post-default NPA recognition mechanism to providing for expected loss from NPAs. The RBI Governor said that a discussion paper will be released soon. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, SBI Chief Dinesh Khara said it will mean more provisioning by banks when the rules change. However, he added that this is a healthy development in the long run.
It is the right opportunity, right and opportune time to really evaluate our migration towards NDS. It might have an impact when it comes to the stage 1 and stage 2, but even stage 3 also, there would be a recalibration which will happen. And I think it's a welcome step which RBI has initiated today in terms of going for a discussion paper on the subject. It might have some impact for the provisioning, but I think eventually it will be in the overall good in the long term.
Well, that is the SBI chief. We will take a break, but up next, ONDC goes live in parts of Bengaluru with more than 200 grocery stores and restaurants registering for trials. That and more when we return.